Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. Got you covered. Traditional league, dynasty league, PPR league, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Welcome into the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Emmet Wyman, back for Week 9 Midseason podcast, as we are literally in the midseason, as every team has already officially played 8 games. So we're going to have a pretty good episode today, not only recapping the games yesterday, recapping the games on Sunday and Monday. Let's recap the game yesterday first, before we even get into the show, because I barely had it on. I had it on in the background. I mean, does anybody watch a Jets game without falling asleep? I mean, seriously, I saw the Jets live and I almost fall asleep. I mean, it's how does anybody watch that team? But I mean, New England, you got a lot of rebuilding to do. Straight up. I mean, the fact that the Jets were up 10, okay, the 0-8, lifeless, non-talented high school players, Jets, with Bountygate at D coordinator, who, I mean, Greg Williams, all he does is... Greg Williams does 2 things as defensive coordinator: yell at players and blitz the house. I mean, that ain't no defensive... I mean, I could do that, okay? What the fuck is he doing that I can't do? It's ridiculous, but... I mean, the Jets are just a pathetic team, and everybody knows it. The players know it. The fact that the Patriots, usually they don't come out and they're not the type of team that comes out, and a lot of it is Belichick, to where they'll just really blow games or they'll be down early, like the Steelers did on Sunday, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But they're not the type of team to do that. I think they were really struggling. Their talent was really struggling versus the Jets' talent, believe it or not. And if you're Bill Belichick, I'm telling you, man, you got a lot of freaking rebuilding to do. That game should have never been that close. That team is just not talented. And I think a lot of, people were saying, what if he misses Brady, Cam isn't that good. I don't think Brady would be able to do much either. I think they'd be, if not, what are they right now? They improved to 3-5 after yesterday. So after that, what is Brady going to be much better than 3-5 after seeing that blowout pounding he took on Sunday night? And let's talk about that game before we get into the Cowboys game and all the other BS games that happened on Sunday. What a freaking what happened? What happened? There's always one game. I say this. I've said this a while, but I've been saying it a lot recently. There's always this one game. You go into the week, you think you have these teams you have these teams by the nail, right? You know them all. You know what their tendencies. You know what they do. You know what they don't do. There's always going to be one game that just has you completely dumbfounded. You got no idea what the hell happened. And you're sitting there, sorry, I'm playing with the mic. I'm trying to get it in a good place. You probably hear all this rattling going around. But I don't see what the heck happened. With this game. Last week, I should say, the game was Tennessee versus Cincinnati. Cincinnati coming in with a banged-up O-line. Got weird-ass 70s mustache Gio Bernard at running back. Joe Mixon's out. A.J. Green's slow as heck. They can't do nothing. Tennessee's a bad defense, but you're expecting them to run them over. It doesn't happen. I mean, this is that game this week. I mean, you just didn't. Nobody expected that. Everybody was thinking the Bucs were going to win. The public was all over the Bucs in terms of the betting markets. So I think everybody was sold that the Bucs were going to win this game, and that just didn't happen. I think once we break the game down, film-wise, what really surprised me watching them back was just how easy New Orleans was able to move the ball on that defense. I mean, I gave a lot of praise on this podcast for Todd Bowles and his game plans recently, going into top teams, playing the Aaron Rodgers, playing the name flew out of my head. But, I mean, going Justin Herbert's, I mean, he's played some good quarterbacks, and he's been, granted, Justin Herbert's a rookie, but still, it's not like the kid can't play. He scored 30 points on the defense. He could play. All right, and you saw it yesterday. But sticking with the Bucs, I mean, it got blown up yesterday. I mean, I think Sean Payton maybe just has Bruce Arians and Todd Bowles down with T, and he knows how to attack it, and I think Breeze knows how to do it as well. Mike Thomas, he didn't really do much, but, I mean, he got open, did his thing for what they needed to do in the first half. Kamara, the guys were... We're going to do next segment. I might as well tease this now before I forget. But next segment, we're going to do mid-season awards, and we're going to do mid-season studs and duds. All right, rather than the weekly studs and duds, with every team officially having 8 games under their belt, it'll be a good time. We'll do the mid-season studs and duds, and then we'll give out awards. And I'm going to spoil one of the awards. And if we had to just end the season today, and I had to pick an MVP, it's Alvin Kamara, and it's not even close. For fantasy, we're talking about. Maybe even real life, too. I mean, just the dynamic piece that he is to that offense is literally carrying that offense. I mean, Drew Brees, there's so many plays where he's so just... I mean, he's crumbling in the pocket. And he knows he can't throw the ball downfield. I mean, that one play early on in the game, I think Traquan Smith in the back of the end zone looked like he took all of his might to throw that past 20 yards. I mean, it's crazy. And then, but there's just some plays where, I mean, he literally throws the ball to Kamara in the flat, and he's just off into the races, missing 4 or 5 tackles, and he's down in the end zone before you even know it. So, I mean, that guy is insane. But just on defense, too, for New Orleans, I mean, they were really just power rushing those tackles back into Brady. And I think a lot of Brady's woes or miscues come when there's a lot of power rush. I mean, that's what the Giants did. That's how they got him so many years with those big DNs. I mean, Tampa's offensive line was really good, and yesterday they looked horrible. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. I mean, Cam Jordan was beating the rookie like a drum. What's his name on the inside was getting pushed. I mean, when you can put pressure on Brady, the Tampa Bay Bucs are going to go down. And I think that's what we got to learn about the Bucs. Brady he's too old and at this point of his career to where he can just move around, avoid a sack. I mean, when he's getting hit, he's like Eli. He's going down. He's a statue. He's 43 years old. He's not moving. He's not nowhere near as fast or athletic as these other guys. So, when he gets hit, he's going to go down. And I think if you're Tampa and you're Bruce Arians, you got to know, man. I mean, I'm glad you picked that kid. He looks good. He got beat like a drum yesterday, but he's been good all year. But, I mean, those guys up front, they got to have a stout, very stout game, every single game, if Tampa wants to go to the Super Bowl. That's just the reality of it. Let's go to the Raider game. Guys, we've said this how many weeks in a row, okay, with the Raiders, with the Chargers. Anthony Lynn cannot win close games, okay? We've said this week after week after week, and I tried to be nice the first couple weeks, saying, Anthony Lynn, it hasn't been working out. I mean, he just can't win those close games. And then, 3 weeks in a row, it's like, come on, Anthony Lynn, this is how many times this is going to happen. Then the Broncos game, it's like, come on, dude, like the Broncos. The freaking Broncos, who got run over by the Falcons. All right? You get run over by the Falcons, you're a bad team. So, Broncos, my God. You let them come back on you. Granted, it's a divisional opponent, but still, they're not a good team at all. I mean, then yesterday, give me a break. I mean, it's just incredible how mismanaged and unprepared the Chargers are late in the game. When the Chargers, they just run out of gas mentally. And they don't have preparation when they go down in those final drives to go seal the deal. They just can't do it. And that falls on my man, Anthony Lynn. And I love Anthony Lynn, the person. All right, I've seen him coach with the Cowboys as a position coach. I think he's excellent. I think he's a great guy. You saw that remember that Super Bowl commercial with the firefighters? I mean, just a great guy and a great leader probably that those guys like. But as a coach, as an X's and O's guy, if I had to grade him on 10, I'd probably give him a 2. I mean, he is just horrible. He don't get it. And look at his coaching tree. Who's his number one guy that he's been teeing on? I mean, he spent some time with Parcells. I mean, he's got that Parcells toughness to him, that kind of moxie. And then he went on and he basically was an understudy with Rex Ryan. And come on, we all know Rex Ryan is a joke. So, I mean, you're telling me that's your guy. I mean, and he's an offensive coach, right? I mean, he was a coordinator for 1 year in Buffalo. When they've signed, Rex got fired, and then he actually got the interim job with Buffalo, and then he went on to coach the Chargers. But I think he had an offensive coordinator title for 1 or 2 years, and that offense was garbage. Granted, they didn't really have a quarterback, but still. They had Fitzmagic. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting my history confused, but who cares? It's the Bills. Hey, listen, Bills have been doing pretty darn well, so they're a different team, but the Bills back then were a joke. So Anthony Lynn, it's like, what do you got with this dude, honestly? I mean, if you're general manager Telesco and Spanos, you got to be watching that game, and then you go turn on, you say, well, we got an elite quarterback. I mean, I bet you Tom Telesco, he's probably sitting there telling the owner, hey, man, I drafted this kid. He's good, man. Look at him. That's my guy. I drafted him. Look at him. I mean, even though I could have scouted him for you, still, you drafted him, so you get the credit. It's your pick. So you're sitting there like, hey, I think I picked the right players. This guy ain't getting it done. And why is he not getting it done? I mean, the last few plays of the game, the laziest call, I'm telling you guys, the laziest play call in the world. The F it call is what I call it. It's just the F it, we're gonna score. F it. This only works with a 25-year-old Des Bryant. It doesn't work with anyone else. And that's the goal line fade. It worked with Megatron, but I mean, come on. Like there's going to be another Megatron. Maybe DK Metcalf. I don't think so. He doesn't run routes like Megatron. But anyway, it's the laziest call in the world. It's a 50-50 jump ball. All right, and only the elite athletes like the Dez, like the Calvin Johnson, and I mean DK would work with him too because he's so damn big. But everybody else, it's not going to work. All right, and they throw it to Mike Williams, which Mike Williams, he's a big guy, talented receiver, really find his mojo. But obviously the Raiders see it coming, they knock the ball down. Then I think it was the final play when they threw it to that tight end, who I don't even know his name. I forgot the guy's name. He wasn't. Why game on the line? You're throwing the ball to a tight end. I don't even know his name. I mean, come on, what are we doing? Like, it's ridiculous. But doing that and then just doing the same play basically to a different player. Obviously they had to review it to make sure he didn't bobble the ball and it didn't fall on the ground, but it obviously did. And that's the game. And look, like I said with Telesco, man, you got to be sitting there like, dude. Like we got a when you got a quarterback, and you got him on the cheapo for the next 4 years, man, you better not waste him. Okay, don't waste him. Go try to win something. I mean, the Chargers probably got. I mean, their cap was horrible. Their cap is horrible coming into this year, and last year it was horrible too, with Phillip Rivers on it. And this Herbert kid is going to allow them to get out of their cap hell. They're going to be pretty good if they can get some pieces around them. They need to get the old line going too. I think the skill positions are good for now. The running backs, they're going to probably need one. I mean, Ekelar's a nice changeup, but he can't count on him. So I don't know where they go from there personnel wise, but I'm going to tell you this right now: Anthony Lynn just ain't it. He ain't it, and I don't know how else to say it, but he's going to keep holding them back in those close games. Speaking of close games, though, let's go before we go to we'll go 2 games. How about my man Gilbert going? He almost won, man. Almost won. The kid from the AAF coming in with a t-shirt and pants, suiting up for the boys. 4th quarterback in 4th week. I mean, you're supposed to get blown out, right? And the Cowboys come down to the wire with the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're leading them in going into all 4 quarters, well, except the first. But, I mean, going into the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th quarter, they were leading the Steelers, who nobody expected that to happen. All right? Now, of course, they lost the game. But, look, the Steelers, it's not like you can really cry over that loss. You really didn't expect to win. But, man, if you're the Cowboys, I mean, you really had a shot at winning that game. I mean, if Garrett Gilbert doesn't throw that ridiculous pick in the back of the end zone to Fitzpatrick, you win the game. I mean, the Steelers aren't going to come back. Big Ben got banged up during the game. That was clearly just killing him. I mean, you could see the ball was coming out of his hands. I mean, to Deontay and to Claypool, lightning. I mean, lightning quick. Unless the Cowboys didn't have a pass rush and just kind of rushed forward and laid back like they usually do, the Big Ben was just getting that ball out quick. I mean, and then I bet you when they all saw Mason Rudolph trot in the game and throw those fucking horrible passes. I mean, Mason Rudolph is literally worthless, guys. What? And I mean, he is one of the worst. Why do they keep picking quarterbacks from the Big 12? They all suck. Seriously, they all stink. Landry Jones, garbage. I mean, they ought to. I mean, Charlie Batch was their best backup that I've seen. And, I mean, they need to get a quarterback because Big Ben is not going to last much longer. So, what are they going to put Duck in the game? I mean, honestly, I'd rather put Duck in the game over Mason Rudolph. Just seeing those 5 plays, you could tell Mason Rudolph doesn't know what the heck's going on with the offense. He doesn't handle pressure well, and he doesn't understand throwing windows. He doesn't anticipate stuff like that. And I use the word anticipate because that's really what quarterbacking is. Just seeing receivers, windows in the position before they're actually there. It's basically seeing the move. If you're playing a game of chess, which football is literally chess on grass, believe it or not. I mean, it's just that instead of chess pieces, these are human beings. But when you're looking at it from the X's and O's, okay, the truth is, in order to be a great quarterback, you got to see the X fall into the place before the O does, and you got to make the throw. And Mason Rudolph, if you could do that, he could do that without pressure. You know, you put him he's basically a 7-on-7. You put him on a 7-on-7 game in scrimmage, yeah, he's probably lights out. But you get him on a line, he's got to make those decisions on a dime. He can't do it. Come on. It's ridiculous. I mean, Duck Hodges honestly gives them a better shot. But, I mean, Steelers better get a quarterback on that team because, I mean, Big Ben is not someone you want to rely on. I mean, he's good. He's going to hold up, but he's 39. You got to get another guy on that team ASAP. But the game, though, just wrapping it up. Juju, I mean, I can't forget this. This is on my note. Juju, stop trying to act like T.O. Okay? You stink. That was your first touchdown in like 20 years. And, of course, it's first to Cowboys. I mean, if you're dancing on the star, you got to score, right? So, of course, he scores. This is my favorite part of the game. He comes running down. I mean, I knew it right away. I'm like, this guy's going to do the T.O. You saw the look on his face. He's, hey, that's good. He saw him with the big-ass smile on his face. Oh, my God, here he goes. Then Randy Gregory slapped that ball out of his hands. He's like, yeah, right, you ain't doing that. So he goes picking backs up. And then apparently, I think it was Claypool probably Claypool. He probably yells, he goes to Randy, he goes, why are you doing that? And he goes, you ain't going to celebrate in my house. The heck, and you're a rookie. So I think that's where the fight started. But my favorite part is when you saw Juju pick up the ball and start running. You saw Big Antoine, Big 99. He started sliding in there. He's like, yeah, you ain't doing this, buddy. You ain't coming in here unless you going to want to take me. And I think when Juju saw that, he's like, yeah, I'm done. But then this is my favorite part. Juju's talking about on Twitter, talking about, or Instagram, one of them. I forget. I remember reading this. He goes, James Conner told me not to do it. Bro, come on. you chose not to do it because you weren't going to get embarrassed, and you knew you were going to get embarrassed if you start celebrating and Big Antoine knocked your ass out. So that's what would have happened. And then that would have been a side. That would have been like baseball, where they just cleared the dughouse and everybody starts brawling. So you don't want that to happen, but at least you made the right decision, Juju. Just, stop with all the cocky nonsense. Get back to playing ball. Get back to getting open, which you haven't done since Antonio Brown left town. And maybe you can actually make a name for yourself, because I think you're still living off that clout from a few years ago. It ain't there, homie. So pick it back up. But anyway, before we get into a break, and we'll do we're going to do power rankings. I should have said this earlier. We're going to do our top 5, bottom 5 quickly, 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll get into the midseason studs and duds. But Giants, you beat the one team you always beat, the Redskins. 23-20. And you almost freaking blew the game to Alex Smith. One leg, Alex Smith. Are you kidding me? Come on. That's incredible. I mean, the fact that you let Alex Smith come down. Alex Smith literally, you want to talk about a quarterback who's a statue? He don't move. And he can't move. Like, he physically can't move. He's on one leg. And the Giants almost let him beat him. I mean, that is crazy. But the fact that guys, this sums up Dwayne. His career's over. The fact that the Washington football team is playing a one-leg Alex Smith over Dwayne Haskins sums up how bad not only Dwayne Haskins is as a quarterback, but how bad he is as a leader and interpreting the playbook that they set in place, because he just ain't picking it up, he ain't getting it, and he ain't good. So, I mean, that's it for Dwayne. But anyway, let's take a break. We've been going for a while. We'll get into top 5, bottom 5, and we'll get into some studs and duds coming up, so stay tuned.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Emmet Wyman. If you didn't know, you know. But let's do top 5, bottom 5 weekly segment, trying to fish out the elite teams and make sure we know who the bad teams are. I mean, eventually I'll just stop doing the bottom 5 because we already know who stinks. But it's funny to kind of just pick on some of these teams that are just, I mean, it's like, come on, you guys are really running this team. All right, so top 5, number 5. This is a tough one, but I'm going to have to probably go with Green Bay. And the reason I'm going with Green Bay is because that man, number 12. I was going to go Seattle here. I had Seattle written down, but it's like, man, bro. Seattle is so bad on defense. It's like crazy. All right, I mean, I know they had Carlos Dunlap come in, give him a little juice. Jamal Adams did nothing yesterday. I mean, he did nothing in that game. And that's an opponent that Jamal Adams knows. It's the Buffalo Bills. You'd expect him to be the leader of that defense that game. You know, be out there making the tackles, maybe a forced fumble, an interception or something. He was nothing. This dude can't. I mean, Jamal Adams, they almost had him playing corner on some plays, and he's horrible. He can't cover. I mean, he can't cover. If you're Joe Douglas, man, you got to be sitting there watching that game, laughing your butt off, knowing that you got 2 firsts and a third. And I'm going to tell you what, man, this Joe Douglas, as much as we pick on the Jets, as much as the Jets are the laughing stock, I think this he knows what he's doing. All right? I mean, that's, because I can, looking back at it now, I would have done the same thing he did. Traded him, get those picks, and just give me a new safety, because it shows that a safety is not going to be your fix-all for a defense. Now, a pass rusher, a Khalil Mack, and Aaron Donald, that will fix your defense. But a safety who's not even A1 in coverage, which is really what matters at safety. I mean, guys, the days of the hard-hitting, the Roy Williams, the Chancellor. I mean, Chancellor was good in coverage too, but I mean, the days of like the Palomalus, who was still, I mean, like they were good in coverage, but the true day, what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to think of a really good example of just a safety who was, I mean, Roy Williams fits the mold perfectly because that's what he was. Just a down-nose, run-box, hard-hitting, knock-your-lights-out safety. I think those prototypes of safeties are just done in today's NFL. They won't survive. And Jamal Adams is kind of that. That's what he is. I mean, he's great on run. He makes plays in the backfield. He blitzes well. But, I mean, aside from that, I mean, I don't know what he is in coverage. I think he's a liability, if I got to be honest with you. John Brown was getting open versus him. So anyway, back to the Packers. I mean, I'm just going to go with them just because I think their defense is a little bit better than Seattle, and Rodgers is Rodgers. So it's hard to go against them. Number 4, let's go with New Orleans. New Orleans, after that blowout win, they definitely deserve a spot in the top 5. Their defense looked really good. If they play that level of defense and, that D-line plays like that week in, week out, they're going to be tough. They're going to be really tough. And we'll see how it goes going forward. But, I mean, I think the offense, I mean, just they'll do enough. I mean, I know Breeze has limitations, but Sean Payton is too creative. He'll find ways to get these guys open 5 yards from the line of scrimmage. I mean, Michael Thomas is open on a slant every freaking play, somehow, some way. He finds a way. I mean, the guy, that's what makes him so good. But defense, I think they're going to have to just keep it up. If they keep it up what they did last night, they're going to be good. Number 3, I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills, man. I mean, that was a great win for Buffalo. They blew the doors off Seattle. They blew the doors off them. I think Seattle really thought that Buffalo was going to come out and they were just going to, try to do this little balance attack. We'll get Zach Moss going. We'll get maybe Singletary involved and then maybe hit him with play-action pass. But Buffalo said, screw that. You can't cover anybody. We're just going to pass all day on you until you stop us. And they never stopped them. And they scored 44. And Seattle turned the ball over, too. I mean, let's not forget about that. I mean, Russell Wilson had a sack fumble. I think he had another interception earlier in the game. So there were some turnovers that cost him and that really gave him that 10-point cushion. But still, Buffalo played really well. Again, they got to get better on defense, too. Allowing 34 to Russell Wilson is, kind of normal, you would say. But, Josh Allen's starting to get back on track. Their offense is clicking. So I think they're going to be a good team. Could be wrong, though. They could go back down. I mean, they're a team that tricks me. I'm like, wow, man, I'm really impressed with Buffalo. Then, when they lose, it's like, damn, like, what happened? But 7-2 records. You are what your record says you are, and that says you're a good team. Number 2, number 2, we're going to go with the Steelers. Steelers, you can't be losing by almost losing to the. You didn't lose, all right? Let me stop. But it's still. You almost lost to my Cowboys. You can't do that. You can't do that and call yourself Super Bowl contenders. Come on. I mean, if you lost to the Cowboys, oh man, that would have been you would have been the clowns of the week. People would have been laughing at you for freaking days. All right, I mean, those players are probably walking out of there like, man, we should have took that a lot more serious. Because I think that's. As much as I want to get hype about that Cowboys performance, especially the improvement we saw on defense, I think a lot of the going into the week was the Steelers like, yeah, that's the Cowboys. We could just show up with our helmets on. We're going to run them over. And that's what they tried to do early on. They just say, hey, we're just going to pound James Conner. Y'all ain't going to stop us. And it was working, but once they got in the red zone, they got to that 30, They wasn't doing much. They was kicking field goals. They were punting. They were getting a sack and, stuff like that. So, I guess it shows two things. One, you got to always be on your toes. You always got to keep your foot on the gas at all times. There's some, like Atlanta. You almost let Denver come back in that game. Come on. You can't have that happen. Almost. I'm not going to give you a lot, but still. You need to keep your foot on the pedal. 60 minutes. I don't know why these coaches think, we're just going to take the foot off. We're going to, run the ball. We're going to, let the clock wind down. Don't get me wrong. There comes a time in the game, like New Orleans in the second half, the clock is your opponent. I get that. But when you're up 10 in the fourth quarter, the clock ain't your opponent. You still got to score. All right, so stop thinking, we're good. We just got to play, make sure it's not a one possession. No, just keep scoring. Run that score up. I don't care. Keep your foot on the gas. That's what I would do if I was a coach. Some of these coaches do it. Like the Shanahans and the Belichick will do it. But most of these coaches, I just don't think they believe in that. I don't know why. But anyway, Steelers, come on, pick it up. And then number one, we're going to go KC. Talk about that game, man. Carolina Panthers, I'm going to tell you what. I was really impressed with what they did. Granted, Kansas City didn't have Chris Jones, so I was leaning towards picking the Panthers plus 10. I probably should have, but I think looking back at it, they almost should have won the game. They really should have won that game. Teddy Two Gloves is making some crazy plays. Down the stretch of that game, that fourth and 14, where he leaped over the line. Come on, when did we see that? He's controlling the ball. He's not turning it over. They got the ground game going with McCaffrey. They were throwing it to McCaffrey, so he was a big impact in the game. Mike Davis got some burn as well, and they're trying to use him more in that power back role. Although, for fantasy, we'll be careful because McCaffrey looked like he nicked his shoulder up in that game, so you might want to don't want to give up on Mike Davis just yet. Might want to hold on to him. But anyway, Teddy Two Gloves is just trying his butt off to get back in that game, and they did. And I think Kansas City really missed Chris Jones. I think that's what's really their defense is just totally lacking without him. And it's clear that he got paid for a reason. He's one of the best. He causes pass rush in the interior, and that's hard to find. So. When you're going to give Teddy Two Gloves all that time, he's going to be mobile and he's going to make some throws, and he's good at not turning the ball over. That's what I really like about him. He doesn't turn the ball over much, and that's all these quarterbacks that throw these 5 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, and all these yards. That's cool and all, but if you're throwing 3-2 picks, I don't want you. You can miss me with that. I'd rather take the quarterback that gives me 2 touchdowns, 0 picks, 0 fumbles. So I think it's it's a good match for Matt Rule going forward. You almost beat the defending champs, and you were coming into this season projected to be the number 1 pick by some people. So I think, the direction of your team is going up, and I'm really impressed by what they've been able to accomplish, especially with the whole new staff in the first 8-9 games. Better than my Cowboys, honestly. Let's go to the bottom 5 now. I was going to put the Falcons in here, but they got to win, so we got to take the Falcons out. I guess we got to put the Cowboys in at number 28, just because record-wise they stink. But, the Cowboys had a good game yesterday. All right? They had a good game. I don't care. You can hate me, call me a homer. They had a good game. Nobody... If you honestly think you came into that game thinking the Cowboys were going to give the Steelers a run for their money to the final minute of that game, you're a liar. You knew damn well you were not thinking that. Going into the game, everybody and their mama thought Steelers by 50, the Cowboys won't score. I thought it myself. So for them to come out and give them a run for their money, I'm really impressed by it. Number 28, I want to go with the Chargers, but I think the Chargers are just good on their players are good. Not all of them, but they have some good players, and I don't think they're a bottom 5 team. But Houston, you're freaking down to playing against Jake Luton. I mean, this kid was throwing. I mean, he was literally like throwing passes like Jared Goff. He was doing the same thing. Doing the same freaking thing. I mean, I don't know where they found this kid, but I was really impressed with how he was slinging it. He wasn't scared. I mean, Jared Goff gets scared. This kid didn't look scared. And granted, it's Texans defense. There's really nothing to be scared about. They don't really play defense hard. I think the players like Romeo, but their defensive line is just putrid. I mean, they can't pass rush nobody. J.J. Watt, we talked about how he's not a tank like he once was, let's say. So, man, they were letting Jake the Snake come in there and just light him up. They literally almost won the freaking game. They almost won the freaking game with the 13 quarterback. And I know Houston, they fired the coach and their season's lost, but still, you got Watson, you're a decent team. But, I mean, man, that was bad. That was really bad. You're going to deserve the spot on 28. 29, I'm going to go with the Giants. I'm going to go with the Giants after that big win yesterday. They're not going to be a bottom 3 team for this week. They had a good win versus Washington. But, the Giants, if you really want to get out of the bottom 5, you got to beat the Eagles next week. Beat the Eagles. Show me something, man. I mean, I'm just going to keep calling the Giants the same old Giants if they lose to the Eagles. And we just, and the Eagles are not a good team. So they could beat them. I don't want to hear this, the odds are against them. Because, look, I mean, the Eagles were literally 1 touchdown within the Cowboys with Ben DiNucci. I mean, come on. Think about that. The Eagles were aside. They had that one safety that was ridiculous. The ball just flew out of the back of the end zone and on the long snap. And then they had the defensive touchdown that shouldn't have been a defensive touchdown. All right, so that was a free 9 points that they got in that game. So essentially they won that game 14-9. Versus the Ben DiNucci Cowboys. Ben DiNucci. All right, Danny Dimes is 10 times better than Ben DiNucci. And that's rare to say Danny Dimes is 10 times better than anyone. But, you could beat the Eagles. So, Giants, listen, most of you fans know the truth. The Giants, they're not stupid. But, some of you Giants fans are talking about we're going to come back and win the division. Beat the Eagles, and I'll take you out of the bottom 5. That's all I got to say. And I'll laugh if you beat the Eagles. So, if you're beating the Eagles, you're just hurting your draft position. And for me, we're going to get a top 2 pick. Come on. We'll take that all day. 30, we're going to go with the Washington football team. Look, if they're going to play Alex Smith, they got no shot of winning. They really don't. You lost to the Giants. Who else are you going to... who are you going to beat if you're Washington? Who are you going to beat? I don't think they're going to beat anybody. You beat the Cowboys, but what does that say? Seriously. Who else are they beat the Eagles. That's their 2 wins. Think about it. Their 2 wins are versus the Ben DiNucci, Andy Dalton Cowboys, and week 1 when they beat up on the Eagles' bad O-line. And I think, the Eagles are... I don't got to say it anymore. You guys know it. If the Eagles, I'm going to say it again just to torture Eagles fans, but that's the truth. Eagles really do stink. And if the Eagles lose to the Giants next week, they'll be in this bottom 5. Finish it up, though. 31. I'm going to go with the Jaguars. Look, they played hard, but play hard don't win games. And for Jacksonville, man, you're on Jake the Snake. Your defense is horrible. You got no shot of winning. So you're 31. The only reason you ain't 32 is because the Jets have literally thrown in the towel 2 months ago. So that's the top 5, bottom 5. Let's go to a break, come back, and we'll get into midseason studs and duds.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Let's get into mid-season. We're not doing week now. We're going to skip that for this time. We're going to do mid-season studs and duds for the 2020 COVID-infected NFL season. So let's get right into it. I think we'll get the obvious out of the way. Russell Wilson, Pat Mahomes were expected to have great seasons. They are. Aaron Rodgers with a bounce-back year. He put him in a stud. Brady, up until last night, he was looking good, but, we'll see if that continues. Josh Allen, I think he's definitely in the top of that stud list because the expectations of he had going into the year. But, the clear-cut number one stud for the quarterback position is Kyler Murray. It's not even close. The rushing production, the development he had as a passer, I think being a little bit more poised in the pocket, knowing when to run, knowing when to pass. It's improved, and they also got him an upgrade in weapons. Getting a DeAndre Hopkins is a huge upgrade on the receiving core. He's one of the best in the league. So to add that to a dynamic offense, Cardinals are rolling, man. They're really rolling on that side of the ball, and it's because of Kyler Murray. He's a dual threat. For fantasy, he's a Hall of Fame fantasy player. But if he wants to be in the Hall of Fame in the NFL, he's got to improve downfield passing, and it's going to be really hard for him because he's got to grow. That's not going to happen because we talked about this before. There's so many times where Kyler, he's standing, he can't see the receivers. He sees a helmet with a cardinal attached to it, but he don't see the actual receiver body like a Tom Brady, like Aaron Rodgers, like a Deshaun Watson, like a Matt Ryan. They see the receivers, okay, because they're tall. Kyler Murray's 5'9". He's not going to see the receivers over 6'5" linemen. Just doesn't work like that. But fantasy, man, I can't knock him. And then a couple other studs. Justin Herbert, for a rookie quarterback, he's been outstanding. It's nothing short of outstanding. Every single week since he started, he's produced. He's been nothing short of special. And I guess we got to put Tannehill in there. Tannehill, pretty low expectations. A guy you could have easily acquired. He was a player I really liked for a backup option during draft time, but I wasn't really all in on drafting him early. I wanted to get him in one of the last picks, so if he did, pretty good backup option for you. Let's go into the duds, the guys that really flopped. I think the injuries to, Dak, Darnold, Cam Newton, Mayfield. Well, Cam Newton wasn't hurt. Cam Newton's he's been hurt, but, he's been healthy and he really hasn't been that good. So I guess I got to put Cam in the dud. Dak, he just got hurt, but if we talking about, his numbers until then, he was the number one quarterback in the league, not even close. And that's real life and fantasy. He was putting up over 40 points a game, 500 yards, 50 rushing, getting a rushing touchdown. Dak was loading up the stat sheet. There was nobody that was going to beat him for the best quarterback in the league with the pace he was on. But, he got hurt, so it really killed him, and it killed a lot of fantasy owners. Real dud, though, and I'm not afraid to say this anymore because it's just the truth, and that's Lamar Jackson. For the value that he was expected to bring this season, being a number one pick in every fantasy draft or second or first round pick, he's not even close to living up to that hype. And that's why I said in the offseason, you do not draft Lamar Jackson first round. You don't draft him at all. You don't draft him. The value is not close to where, I mean, he's not going to perform anywhere close to the value that you got last year. I said if you draft him there, that means you're expecting him to at least give you the same production he gave you last year. Meaning that he's got to, if Lamar Jackson were giving me the same production that Kyler Murray's giving me, then I think I'd put him in the stud. But even still, his ceiling and his projection was just so much higher than everybody else due to that dynamic season last year. And he hasn't lived up to it. He hasn't, I mean, the passing game's been nothing short of just god-awful. There's no rhythm. He doesn't have good touch on his passes. He's very athletic. He can move around a lot really well, but it's not going to win versus elite defensive coordinators, so we're going to figure out that it's easy to contain. They're going to scheme up a plan to contain him and make him stay in the pocket and force them to beat him with down-the-field passes in a drop-back pass game, and Lamar can't do that. So that's why you're kind of limited with him, and if you picked him in the first round, shame on you. So that's definitely a dud. Carson Wentz, he's been an absolute dud. He stinks. I mean, I don't want to hear nothing about Carson Wentz. He just absolutely stinks. A guy that I was really wrong about is Matt Stafford. I thought he was going to be a really good play this year, really good late-round option at quarterback. I was wrong. He hasn't been that good at all. Detroit is just literally a dumpster fire. I mean, Matt Patricia should be fired. We said this before. I mean, that team is just horrible. Straight up. They're horrible. And everybody on that team is not even a viable fantasy starter. I mean, Swift has some talent, but they don't want to play him. They want to play AP for some reason. I don't know why. Don't ask me. But for all the DeAndre Swift people, it must be killer. I remember doing the pod in the week of draft, so like the first week of September. Swift was actually a target of mine throughout the entire offseason. But once they signed AP last minute. Once they did that, forget about it. I just said, screw it, we're taking his name off. I'm not drafting him because I knew that there's going to be some BS going down where they're going to get AP on the field. And they're going to try working carry on it. It's just going to be too much. DeAndre's not going to work around it. But Matt Stafford, going back to him, he's just been nothing. Rivers a dud, but I think we expected that. Danny Dimes dud, we expected that. And then this we definitely expected, Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is, you know what I want to say. I tried to hold back. I did, but that's all. I mean, that's quarterbacks for you right there. Running backs. I mean, look, the obvious, Derrick Henry. I mean, Derrick Henry's King Henry. He's back. He's a stud. Kamara's been the best. Dalvin Cook. He's been outstanding these past 3-4 weeks. I mean, he's been on an absolute tear. Nobody's stopping him. So if you have him, man, if he stays healthy, he's running the distance. James Robinson is probably the kid that nobody expected to do well. Nobody even knew his name. I didn't know his name until a couple weeks into September. And when I first watched him, I was really impressed with what I saw. He's a really good running back. I mean, just fantasy aside, you look at him running behind that crappy Jaguars line. I mean, man, he is doing really well. I'm really impressed with what I see. He sees it. He has really good vision. He's able to make the cuts. He doesn't do anything that's just superfluous in his movement. It's very smooth. It's very efficient. And I just love the style of his running. I think he's going to be a really good running back for a long time. And, you know, if you picked him up early on, good job. Because I didn't see that one at all, I'll admit. One I did see, and I told people to stash him if you want to, if you're lacking depth later on in the running back draft, is Kareem Hunt. I said, you know, Nick Chubb goes down, which has happened before. He's had a history of injuries dating back to college. You know, this is probably the best number 2 back in the league. You definitely want him, especially on a team that's literally building the entire offense for the running game. Signing O-linemen, drafting O-linemen, I mean, they want to just run the football down your throats. They hired Bill Callahan, probably the best offensive line coach in the league, in my opinion. And they said we're going to run it. So, you might as well get all the running backs for Cleveland. Everybody was grabbing Chubb, 20 overall, just reaching for Chubb. And, of course, Chubb went down. And Kareem Hunt stepped in. If you got him in the 9th, 10th round, you stole. And he's been the same production as Chubb, literally doing the same thing behind the same line. And that's what you got to do. There's a lot of times Madison was another guy that I thought would do the same thing, but he hasn't really been, that good when he got his opportunities like he was last year. But Kareem Hunt, I mean, he can still play. He led the league in rushing, so I mean, it's not like he can't play. He could definitely play when you give him a good line. And the Browns are literally just a power running team, and they're gonna run it with Chubb, run it with Hunt. So that was just a really good pick. Aaron Jones, he's been good. I think his numbers are a little inflated because he has like a 40-point game versus the Lions, but he's still been solid. And I think that's all I could really say for studs. I guess if for honorable mention, we got to throw in guys like Antonio Gibson for the draft value that we got on him. You could rewind. I guarantee you I said pick this guy. And, man, this kid was there. 10th round, you snagged one, man. You snagged one. And then you got to give credit to Mike Davis for stepping up for Christian McCaffrey going down. He's been rock solid. Rock solid when McCaffrey's been going down, and he's had to step in. Now let's get on to some duds. Kenyon Drake has just been a dud. I mean, that was so easy to predict. I mean, Kenyon Drake is talented, someone that I considered, but at the end of the day, the guy just really he didn't have the correct burn that you really needed for a workhorse back. And I don't know if correct is the right term, but his whole career he was never the guy. Never was, never will be. There's always someone down his sleeve. There's always a coach that's willing to give someone else the rock. And to draft him at 20 overall just made absolutely no sense. But what did make sense was the fact that ESPN was projecting Kenyon Drake to have, a good season. And they were talking about a high-powered offense with Cliff Kingsbury. Well, if that offense is supposed to be so high-powered, let's just go get the quarterback that's running that offense in Kyler Murray. And guess what, guys? Kyler Murray has more rushing yards than Kenyon Drake. So imagine that. Imagine that. I'm telling you guys, if you pick Kyler Murray, there's a pretty good shot you're going to win your league. He's that good. And, he was someone that I talked about, but I didn't exaggerate because I didn't think in my leagues, he was going to be there late. I thought I had somebody going to pick him 6th round, 5th round, and he'll be gone. So it's not worth talking about him. But believe it or not, for a couple of my leagues, man, he's sitting there 8th, 9th round. I'm like, why not? I got to at this point. This is ridiculous. So anyway, back off the Kyler Murray groupie train. Back on to, let's go to some duds at the running back. I guess we got to put Zeke in the dud category, considering where he was picked. I mean, a lot of it, he can't control. The O-line's been totally banged up, nowhere close to that Pro Bowl Dallas line. Dak going down really hurt him, so teams could just sell out for the run now. But at the end of the day, he hasn't been good himself. He fumbles the football too much. He cleaned it up the past few weeks, but he was still a big issue. And he wasn't really efficient. And he doesn't look, this really hurts to say, but, am I crazy to think that when they put in Tony Pollard looks more explosive than Zeke? Maybe, am I the only one just seeing that? I don't think I am. But, it's honestly the truth. They put in Tony Pollard, his change of direction is like lightning compared to Zeke. And he's up the field for a 10-yard gain. Zeke, I like Zeke on those 4th and 1s, 3rd and 1s. He's going to power his way through. Goal line, he's still going to power his way through. And he could do some things in the receiving game. They just don't get him involved. And it really pisses me off. It really does. Because they should be using Zeke like a Kamara, and they're not. And he has the ability like Kamara. I don't think he has that explosiveness like Kamara, but he definitely has the ability to do the skills like Kamara can. So, hasn't worked out, but, a lot of it is stuff he can't control. Le'Veon Bell, dud. Le'Veon Bell's he was someone that I picked in one of my leagues regretfully, just like, maybe he does well just in case. He's getting a lot of volume. I said on the show, I should have just listened to myself. I knew on the show that I was talking about just, why I pick him. It's stupid. And I didn't even listen to myself. That's how much of a dummy I am. So, go figure. I guess I pay the price. But, hey, hopefully you guys didn't. Joe Mixon, hurt. It's been an absolute dud. Had that 130-point game versus Jacksonville, but I think everyone does. And that's it for Joe Mixon. Just a 5, 8, 10-point guy game. Nothing worth a first-round pick. I'm wrong about that one. I thought Joe Mixon was, just going to come out after that getting paid and do really well. But I think the problem is, and still is, that freaking offensive line stinks. It's horrible. Joe Burrow's taking a beating. I don't know how Giovanni Bernard's getting points behind that low line, but I think he does. They throw to him more in the receiving game for some reason. But aside from that, I just don't get it. I don't get why they're not utilizing Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon is just as talented as Ezekiel Kamara. He really is. I know some people won't believe me, but it's just the truth. The guy can play. He just doesn't really have good surroundings around him. And it's my fault for misevaluating that. But let's go to receivers. Tyreek Hill, obviously, the guy's every year the guy's a top receiver. He just has freakish speed, freakish talent. So there's no surprise with him. Devontae Adams, no surprise with him. He's been outstanding this year. Calvin Ridley was someone we projected to have a pretty good breakout year, and he did. He's tailed off the last couple of weeks due to injury, but he's been rock solid for you so far. DK Metcalf has just come out of the. DK Metcalf is probably the biggest stud. He's come out of. We thought DK would have a good year, second year, but man, he's been explosive. He's on pace to have over 1,400 yards and 16 touchdowns. That is pretty ridiculous. Granted, he's got the best quarterback on the earth throwing it to him, so it's pretty nice to have that. But his physical tools are just something else. Tyler Lockett, he's had a couple 30-point games versus bad defenses to kind of inflate his numbers, but still, he's got a lot of talent, okay? And when he has those 30-point games, you're going to win your week. So it just depends who Russell feels like throwing the ball to, I guess. Stefan Diggs, great year. He seemed to me like his ADP was in the 60s, I think. In my league, he was drafted, probably a little too late. He was, because that's really where you got to grade the studs and duds, is how he was drafted 45th. That was my bad. But that's how you got to really grade it, is how are these guys compared to their ADP? What's their ADP going to be next year? ADP obviously meaning average draft position. And I'm telling you, for the 45th overall pick, if you got Diggs, that's a good pick. He gets a ton of targets. He catches all of them, too, it feels like. You put the ball anywhere within 5 yards, he's going to lay out and go get it. Him and his brother just have this great instinct for the ball. They play the ball really well. And, high-powered offense, Josh Allen playing well. It's a good pick if you picked him. To me, it seemed like, I like the volume. It just seemed too obvious, right? Well, I'm like, is he really going to do those numbers? And, yeah, of course he does. Guy I was wrong about, too, Will Fuller. Will Fuller's been great this year. With Will Fuller, I knew he could play. The thing was, I don't know how he's going to fare without DeAndre Hopkins, because I thought he was just a really high-end number 2 receiver that was benefiting off one-on-one with Hopkins. But, Will Fuller's getting it done by himself, man. He's still putting up numbers, so I can't really knock him at all. Adam Thielen, he's been a stud when they thrown the ball to him. He's tailed off the past couple weeks because Dalvin Cook's just been on another level, but he's still been really good. And then DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best receivers in the league. This guy is ridiculous. And Kyler Murray having that breakout season really helps. Let's go to some duds. Odell stinks. Odell stinks, guys. You take away that one Cowboys game when he had the 30 points. Odell's done absolutely nothing this year, and he's hurt. So if you picked him, I mean, I told you guys the first episode I ever did on this network, never to pick Odell, never. Especially with the way his career's been trending, that's not a smart pick. And people are going to say, "Oh, you're just hating." Well, I'm going to just tell you, don't pick him. And if you didn't pick him, you're probably smiling, because if you did pick him, your team is screwed. Other guys that just totally crapped the bed compared to their ADP. Cooper Kupp, I was really thinking was going to be a top receiver picked, but he just don't get in the end zone, and that kind of makes him like useless. He's had 2 touchdowns all year. I mean, that's literally equivalent to what Darren Waller's giving me. Darren Waller's giving me more touchdowns, at tight end than this guy, Cooper Kupp. So I haven't really been impressed with him at all, fantasy-wise. Juju. I mean, where was he drafted in my league this year? He was drafted, let's see. Remember last year he was drafted in the top 20, which is ridiculous. This year he was drafted 50. And he's not even worth that. I mean, and Juju's just been horrible. I mean, he had the good game yesterday, but, I mean, come on. Again, I said this all year, but, wipe good games out versus the Cowboys. That doesn't really mean much, okay? You could say, every team, I get it. Guys, look, the Dallas Cowboys, they had a really good game yesterday. A really good defensive performance, but still, the first 8 weeks, they are going to go down as the worst defense in NFL history, if one of the worst. Maybe not the worst, but, I mean, it's pretty darn bad. They could change that the second half of the year, though. So I said the first half. All right? First half of the year. So, anyway, back to the receivers. DJ Chark, been absolutely nothing. He was a guy I told you stay away from. 2 reasons. One, he has a limited route tree. He runs a go route. He runs a slant. That's all he can do. And the second thing is his quarterback is horrible. It's freaking Gardner Minshew, guys. He doesn't do nothing to help his receivers. That's all I can really think of for receiver. Let's go to tight end. Tight end, the obvious, Travis Kelce. He's been the best tight end in the league. George Kittle, before the injury, was doing really well. Robert Tonyan, he's been doing pretty well. I mean, he had that breakout game with the Falcons. Ever since, he's been on a roll. Jonnu Smith, a guy we've been on the whole offseason, was projecting this guy to be a breakout. He's been nothing short of that. He finally broke the cold streak last week with a touchdown. It was 3 straight games without a touchdown. Finally ended it. Good for Jonnu. We expected him to get back on the board, and he did. TJ Hawkinson, I'm putting him in the stud. I mean, TJ Hawkinson has been really, really solid for the ADP. I mean, he was another one. I recommended him, hey, why not take a chance on this guy 13th round? I mean, why would you, guys, if TJ Hawkinson's in the top 5 tight end scoring, okay? Think about the draft like this. Why in the heck would you draft George Kittle 25th overall when you get TJ Hawkinson 100th and 20th overall? Okay? Think about that value difference. All right? If you drafted George Kittle, you're screwed. It's not even the fact that he's hurt. It's the fact that you wasted that much capital on a tight end. You don't draft tight ends high. And the reason I said is because there's going to be guys that come on during the year or guys you could pick up late and stash that are going to do well. And a lot of people say, oh, you're just saying that, but I don't want to bet on that. Well, it happens every year. You just got to find the guy. I mean, Hawkinson was a pretty easy find. You could have easily got him. Robert Tonyan, you could have picked up off waivers. Jonnu Smith. We said draft Jonnu in the 10th round. Lock him up, store him, you'll be fine. And if you did, you're fine. Past couple weeks been rough, but still. He's had some really big-time games. Mark Andrews. We're going to go to studs now. Duds. Mark Andrews has been a dud. He's had a really good first couple weeks, but aside from that, he's been a dud. Not been impressed at all. Just too inconsistent. And a guy, again, I was really thinking he's doing well, but probably not worth that 30th overall pick just due to the fact that you can get tight ends later. Evan Ingram, dud. Can't catch the ball. What are you going to, what's the point of playing you at tight end? You can't catch. Go play line. Mike Gesicki, I was thinking he was going to have a breakout year. Maybe the quarterback change kind of killed him a little bit. He maybe gets back on pace, but that hasn't been good for Mike Gesicki. As good as I want it to be, I should say. I think guys, that's really it. Tight end, there's only like 5 guys that were projected. Oh, Zach Gertz. Zach Gertz is the dud of the year at tight end. He was hurt, but even before he was hurt, this guy was doing nothing. If you pick Zach Ertz in the top 4 rounds, you want to talk about a team that's screwed. Even if he comes back, he's not doing anything. All right? So meanwhile, while you're messing around with Zach Ertz, I got Dallas Goedert off waivers. And he gets more points than Zach Ertz. How you like that? Consensus? Anyway, that's all I got, guys. I guess we'll do... for defense, look. Ravens defense, outstanding. We expected that. They got like every damn Pro Bowler in the league on that defense. Colts, they've been pretty good on defense. Steelers, no surprise. Defenses that stink. The Jags, the Cowboys, the Raiders, the Jets, the Falcons, the Vikings, the Texans, the Bengals, the Lions, the Seahawks, the Titans. There's a lot of bad defenses this year that you give the dud to. But, again, I always say this, don't draft defense high, don't draft kicker high. Why? Because it comes down to matchup. It doesn't come down to season. It's not like running back. It's different. It's all matchup. So if you understand that, thank you. If you didn't, you're just losing. But let's do midseason awards. This is more NFL than fantasy. I guess if we're going to do MVP first, and if I had to give the MVP, it's pretty simple, guys. I'm giving it to Alvin Kamara. Fantasy and real life, I'm giving it to Alvin Kamara. What he's done this year, literally carrying that Saints offense with old man Breeze, who throws the ball 5 yards down the field. Pretty impressive. And let's make no mistake about it. The Saints were a mediocre team before he got there. Think about it. They were mediocre as hell. They were 8-8, 8-8, 8-8, just like Jason Garrett. 3 years, 8-8. All right? And, their defense definitely improved that draft, getting like Williams at safety and Lattimore at corner. But, those guys have been nowhere near the same in terms of an immediate and long-lasting impact that Alvin Kamara has brought. Alvin Kamara brought an entire new dimension to that offense that was never there before. New Orleans never had a running back that good. They had Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram was nowhere near as versatile as Alvin Kamara. And Drew Brees, you remember the years when they had Darren Sproles, and, he had career highs with Drew Brees. Sean Payton was probably looking for a receiving back to be, a great receiving back. And I think, when he finally found Kamara, his eyes probably lit up. So good pick by the Saints, and just a hell of a career he's had so far. I'm really impressed by his game. He's a guy that could be in the Hall of Fame easily. Maybe I'm just hyping him up too much, but I really believe that because he changes the way I look at running backs with his play style. Coach of the year, I think I got to give it to Mike Tomlin. Just the cohesiveness that the Steelers have combined with, just everybody being on the same page, that's all credited to the head coach. Keeping the players, the coaches besides him, the scouting staff, the GM, the owner, they're all on the same page. They're all ready to rock. And you see it. That's why they're 8-0. Almost lost to my Cowboys, but heck, I'll take Mike Tomlin as my coach any day. The guy's, he knows how to get to his players in the right way. He knows good game planning. He hires good staff around him. He drafts well. A lot to say about Mike Tomlin, but I think he's easily the coach of the year so far. Rookie of the year, I'm going to give it to Justin Herbert. I've been impressed as F with this kid. I just love this kid, man. I think the Chargers really got lucky with him, and they're going to have a good quarterback for the next 10 years. They just got to get him a good coach. Team with the biggest disappointment, I think I can't think of another team, man. It's got to be the Cowboys. I mean, I know people were saying Super Bowl this, Super Bowl that. Guys, here's the thing with the Cowboys. Every freaking year, it's Super Bowl. Okay? Every year. That's just the way the organization is. This is an organization with a deep history, with 5 Super Bowls in the bank, and an expectation that's sky high every single year because of those old fans that seen those Super Bowls. And, you know, the big fan base in general. Just the way the Cowboys brand is being talked about on a daily basis. It's everywhere, and it's because of Jerry and his marketing skills. But look, marketing don't equivalent into championships at the end of the day. So hopefully he gets this right. So the next season could be anything but this season. But I got to put the Cowboys in the biggest disappointment. And then if I had to give an honorable mention, it'd probably be whatchamacallit, Chargers. I mean, Anthony Lynn, you just go home, dude. Midseason award for, I was going to say award, but a team that's looking at the number 1 pick, the worst team in the league, that's obviously the Jets. The Jags were the team that can give them a run for their money, but the Jets are going to get Trevor Lawrence. I think we all know that by now. Coaches, I predicted that are going to be gone. This is interesting. I did this last year, and I was correct on like most of the names, 4 out of 5. I thought Anthony Lynn was going to get fired last year, and he didn't. So I was kind of shocked they brought him back. This year, his ass, I bet the house he's getting fired this year. Everything I got, I know he's getting fired. The players are just going to come on to the point where it's like, dude, we like you and all, but like you're out here talking about, players got to make plays. It's like, bro, your plays stink. How we going to make a play with these garbage-ass plays? So Bill O'Brien and Dan Quinn both got the boot. I think everybody in the freaking world expected that. Dan Quinn was a dead man walking. Bill O'Brien was just, a general manager trying to save his job, making these big-time moves to go all in. Didn't work out, obviously. Coaches that I think are definitely going to get fired before next year. Adam Gase, that's obvious. Adam Gase ain't coming back. Doug Marrone, he's not coming back. I think Jacksonville's going to clean house after this year. Matt Patricia, I think the players have just lost him. I think the players don't care about him. They're not going to fight for him. So I just think that's going to result in more losses, and especially if Matt Stafford's gone, you can forget about it. So he'll be out the door. Guys that I think are they have a good shot of getting fired, but they might not. Vic Fangio. I think Vic Fangio, he's not a bad coach at all, in my opinion, but I think, John's getting tired, and, John's not going to admit that he stinks at his job, so he's going to blame the coach, and, Vic's going to have to take the fall for his crappy-ass roster that he's coaching. But, that's the tough part of the business, and, the big executives like guarding their desk, as I like to say. So that's what it comes down to. And then, of course, Anthony Lynn. Anthony Lynn, Anthony Lynn, dude. How do you watch that game if you're the Spanos and, say, we're better than this? We're better than the frickin' Raiders. We're better than the damn Broncos. You're 2-6 and your quarterback's playing lights out. It don't make no sense. It just don't make no sense. And the last thing I'm going to do before we get into a break, obviously predict the Super Bowl. If I got a gun to my head, if before this week I might have said Seattle, but Seattle stinks on defense. I don't think they'll get to a Super Bowl. It's hard to, after seeing the Saints whoop the Bucs' ass, it's hard not to say them. It's hard. So I think if I got a gun in my head, I'm going to say Chiefs Saints. And, it's probably not going to happen because I said it, but, I think the Saints can move the ball and they could play good enough defense, better than the Seahawks and the Packers. And then Chiefs, I think the Chiefs are back. The Chiefs are, they're on their usual Kansas City Chief, Andy Reid type dominance. So they won't be going anywhere, in my opinion. That's all I got, guys, though. Let's take a break. We're going to finish up the show real quick, get some waiver pickups, add to your team, and we'll be out of here in 5. So stay tuned.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Final segment, GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We're over an hour, guys. Look, we're doing waivers. You know, the moment you all waited for, the waivers, right? Guys, I mean, I say this every week at this point. You got to know who your starters are, all right? You got to know who you can rely on. Waivers at this point are just filling roster spots. It's rare that you're going to get starters. I mean, I pulled 2 starters off waivers last week in Marvin Jones and DJ Dallas, but it's not going to happen every week. It's not something you want to count on. So I wouldn't be all over these players that are being basically force-fed to you by the consensus as priority waiver ads when these guys really just stink. But I got a few names I like this week. Mike Davis got dropped. Guys, Mike Davis is a guy that you need to add on your team. I know people say, oh, McCaffrey's back, he's useless. Guys, McCaffrey might be back, but who knows if he's going to be back for a long time. Because let's not act like he can't get hurt again. I mean, just because you get hurt one time don't mean you can get hurt twice, especially with the way it's been going for him this past year. So I would stash Mike Davis. Word on the street is McCaffrey's feeling a little shoulder pain. He's questionable for the game. If he can't go, guys, Mike Davis is a starting running back on your lineup. I don't care who you got. He's a starter. I mean, he's 15, 20 points a game with his big body. So I pick him up and stash him if he's available in your leagues. He got dropped by a lot, so he's probably sitting on waivers. Alan Lazard, I talked about him a lot. I've said stash him already. If you haven't, he's still out there, so stash him. I said it a little too early, probably, just because he hasn't come back yet officially. I guarantee you he's coming back this week. I know for a fact. They were going to activate him last week, but the game was on Thursday, so they just said, hey, we'll wait another week. But he's going to be back this week. He's probably going to start, considering, Marquez Valdez-Scantling's got butterfingers, and the other guy ain't that good. And look at it on paper, guys. If Devontae Adams is going to be on the double team, who's going to be open? It's going to be either Robert Tonyan-Funyan or Alan Lazard or Marquez Valdez-Scantling. And I'm telling you right now, I'd rather have Alan Lazard being the one catching the ball rather than those two guys who can't do crap. I mean, Tonyan-Funyan, all right, but come on. Let's be real about it. So, I mean, look, guys, there's upside with him. He's a stash, but there's a good shot down the road, especially if Devontae Adams gets hurt. Let's not forget about that. I mean, if Devontae Adams gets hurt, Lazard can be looking at 10, 20 points a game. And if you got that off waivers at this time of the year, that's stealing. So, rather be early than late, guys. So, I'd take a chance on him. Guys that I'd keep the flag on. They're not really priority ads, but flag them down. Keep an eye on Jerry Judy. 20-point game last week versus Falcons. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's the Falcons. So I'm not really sold that Jerry Judy's a 10, 15-point game a week receiver. Definitely shows a lot of potential. He shows some really nice route running, but Drew Lock, in my opinion, stinks as a quarterback. So I'm going to hold off on him for now. But, if you need a receiver, fill up a roster spot, take a chance on him. Josh Kelly, I was on him earlier in the season. I thought after those first couple weeks, wow, man, this is going to be a great waiver ad. I'm glad I told everybody stash him on the bench. Then Aguilar went down. I'm like, man, I'm a genius. This guy's having 20 carries a game. He's going to be 100 yards a game. And then that clearly ain't happened. I guess they don't think he's that good, and then you turn on the tape, he's a pretty bland running back. But he's going to get the volume, and that's the only reason I like him. Now, without Aguilar, Justin Jackson went down, and then they had the audacity to give the ball to Kalen Bellagio from the Dolphins over Josh Kelly, which I don't know why they're doing that, but I think that says that Anthony Lynn has pretty low confidence in Josh Kelly. And Anthony Lynn, if there's one position he knows, it's the running back, having coached that position a lot before. So he's a guy, look, he's a flag down guy. He's not a guy that's a priority ad because of the other snaps being handed to him by Bellagio. Then I guess a couple deep league ads. Jacoby Myers from the Patriots is interesting. He had 12. Look, I think you look at those numbers: 12 catches, 170 yards yesterday versus the Jets. You say, it's the Jets. They stink. I could have 100 versus the Jets, but look, he was getting a lot of targets. He had almost 50. I think he had 15 targets. That is a lot. That's a lot. And the Patriots don't have a number one receiver, so could be the guy. Never know. But again, deep league ad, not a guy that you add in an 8 or 10 man league by any means. And then there's one more guy. I forget his name. You know who it is? It's that white running back on the Bears, and I don't want to say race, but that's how I remember him because his name is like Brian something. I don't even know his name, but Montgomery went down, guys. That's one of my points. So watch Montgomery's injury status. The thing is, he's a deep league ad, guys. He's not a priority. All right. The reason I don't is because he's on the freaking Bears, and we didn't even talk about how bad the Bears are. The Bears suck on offense. All right, and I'm going to say this and just end the show because this is the point that deserves to be on the final segment to just drop the mic and walk off. Matt Nagy, you stink, bro. You really stink. I said this on K-Vaughn show. This guy is worried about the game. He's worried about his play sheet too much. He's not even watching the game. And, I said that, it sounded stupid at the time. It sounded like, why would a head coach not be watching the game? That sounds stupid, right? Well, I agree with you. It does sound stupid. But you know what sounds stupid? It was when Javon, whatever his name is, knocked the lights out of that Saints player. Or didn't really knock him, but he hit the crap out of him for God knows why. And then he says, I didn't see it. Well, you just proved my point. He's worried about his play sheet. He's worried about, he is so worried about the next play. Oh, what should I do? Should I do a reverse, a triple reverse, a double option, a freaking flea flicker, a ham and cheese pickle sandwich? This guy is trying to get all these plays, that are just looking so pretty on the chalkboard. But when they come to real life, they ain't that good. And look, Matt Nagy, here's the thing that I'm going to end out, and I said this before. You're the head coach of the damn Chicago Bears. You're not the head coach of the Chargers. You're not the head coach of Las Vegas. You're not the head coach of Miami. You're the head coach of the damn Chicago Bears. Okay? And I think a lot of these coaches, they really don't understand the history of that organization. I'm really into just the history because I think if you want to have success, you should adapt to an identity that's similar to what the team's history is. And that team's history is being one of the most physical defenses, with one of the most badass, just run you over teams. That 85 Bears team, just look it up on the internet. My God. The players, the toughness they played with. The games are below zero. They're out there just running dudes over. And then, Matt Nagy's team has looked like a bunch of wimps doing three option reverses to get a first down on a 3rd and 1. It's like, are you serious, bro? It just don't make no sense what he's doing. But Bears players, in my opinion, are just not viable. Aside from Robinson, I don't want any of them. I think they all just stink, and a lot of them are just suffering because of Matt Nagy. The only one who isn't suffering, though, is Mitch Trubisky. He's probably over there saying, I told you, man. It's not me, man. Not me. It's not my fault why we stink. Mitch, come on. just stop. I mean, Mitch is probably still rehabbing, so he's not even worried about it. But anyway, guys, we're an hour 20. I'm done. That's all I got. Hope you enjoyed the show. Go to Twitter, GSMC_FFootball. Follow it. Subscribe. Spreaker Network, Spotify, YouTube, you name it. We're on there. Listen to the podcast. Run it up. Share your friends. Tell your homie, tell your mama, tell your brother, tell your sister, tell your neighbor, tell the policeman, tell the grocery clerk, tell the bank teller, tell everybody you know who played that damn fantasy that this is where the info's at and this is where it's hot. So appreciate you listening, man. Hit me up. Emmet Wyman. I'm out of here.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.